understanding that with our thoughts, our words, and our actions, we are creating our reality, it gives a very tangible tool for us to create what we desire to create.
So what happens is when we unpack what's not ours and start coming to coherence, the mind takes a break, takes a rest, and the soul steps in. And the soul knows who we are, why we've come here, what our earth walk is about.
If I can trust life, and I can trust that I am at one with everything, that I am creating everything. So why am I creating this consciously or unconsciously? Why am I creating this experience in my life? And what is it that I'd like to experience instead?
There is an absolute multi-dimensional smorgasbord of paths, practitioners and facilitators, tools and techniques through which we can unpack that which is not ours. And that journey of discerning is part of our learning.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in.
Hello, Soul Fam, and welcome to It's Not What You Think. So today I have a very, very, very special guest with me that I cannot wait to share with you. So this is Leanne Edwards. She goes by many names, which I'm sure she'll share a few as well. She is an architect of the soul. I already got that one wrong. Archaeologist of the soul. New Earth architect. What I know her as is a dear friend, sister, and mentor. So Leanne has been a teacher for me for the past 3 years now. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring her into this podcast was to share with you the magic of this woman and to start to share, hopefully, some of the codes that this brilliant being holds. And I know that personally, I have benefited so much from her love, from her mentorship, from having her by my side as I've been walking a very interesting journey towards my soul awakening and reconnection. And so, without further ado, Leanne, would you like to formally introduce yourself?
Thank you, Celine, and thank you for this invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to come meet your online family when I've probably spent that majority of my time in my cave. And it was a very worthwhile investment of time that is undervalued in our current society. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you want to tell us a little bit about what is it that you do?
That's a good question because it doesn't fit into a box.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I'm a cleaning lady.
Yeah, I know.
And that cleaning spans dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm not cleaning, I'm generally drinking tea. Also a tea lady, a cleaning lady and a tea lady.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time hanging out on the event horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And that event horizon is that edge where we disappear into nothingness in the black hole. And I hang out there until soul family are ready to take that leap.
Mm-hmm.
and into the unknown, learn to live in the not knowing, and have mustered enough courage to call their future self into the now.
Mm-hmm.
And to show up as be a leader and a change maker in our new earth. Yeah.
Well, we're going to be diving into that. And before we do, I'd love to share a story about how I met Leanne 3 years ago, because it will probably give some visual as to your cleaning lady skills and tea lady skills. Let's illustrate it a little bit. So about 3 years ago, I remember I was at a pool party in Bali, in Shamanic, the W. I was at the W, and I went to go meet some friends for brunch. And I remember sitting next to somebody who was working with you. And, I was in a space in my life where I had just started a really deep awakening journey through reclaiming just my soul. What is my soul? How do I reconnect to my soul? How do I heal? How do I do the cleaning up of all these unconscious pieces that were popping up that you can probably articulate better than I can, and I will ask you to in a moment. But I remember sitting next to this person, and she says to me, "Oh, you have to try out this lady, Leanne. She's amazing. Like, you go to a session and she just can see all your unconscious blocks, and she just burps the whole way. She's just like, bleh. I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm very curious about experiences, and anytime there's a new experience, even if as long as I get a yes or that intuitive hit, I think to myself, okay, you know what? I want to go to the burping lady. Let's try it out. Let's figure it out. And I remember we had our first session, and man, you were in New Zealand, and I was so unhappy about the 6 a.m. session. 6 a.m. is my only time. So I show up 6 a.m. and I'm already grumpy, just waking up. Who is this lady? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I remember you started to ask me a series of questions about my childhood and significant moments in my life where I had experienced trauma or distortion. And I remember I was just talking to you about it for about an hour and a half. That's how long it took for that first session. And I got out of that session, and that afternoon I went to the gym and I was training with Jade, who you know. And she's like, "Oh, how was your session?" I'm like, "I don't know about this lady. I woke up at 6 a.m. and then I had to sit there and talk about my life for an hour and a half. This doesn't work for me." And then I remember you had said we need at least 2 sessions. So I just said, okay, just benefit of the doubt. I'll go in for a second session with this lady. Now, here we are, 3 years later, 55 sessions, like 3 weeks in Egypt, countless amount of hours spent together in company. And I can just easily say, I get what you're doing. It's really this excavation of the unconscious and the ways that we have been hijacked by just the matrix, which we'll explain it a bit better. But it's all these ways that we're not actually living in accordance to our soul destiny and our soul purpose, and there's all this crap that's in the way that we do need to clean up. And that's been my journey together with you, is just really learning how to dive into the depths of my soul and release and let go of what does not serve me, and actually just reconnect to the truth of who I really am. And so with that said, I would love if you could share with us what it means to excavate through your unconscious and do this cleanup. And I also want to let you know, I want to give you permission to speak to my experience. You can use your intuition to guide, but you are welcome to share with this audience where you found me 3 years ago, how I was doing, and how I've been doing, and it's essentially the work that we've been doing together. I'm happy to share it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just with your sharing that, it made me another way to describe what I do, because no meeting is the same, be it with the same person or another person. It's with permission from an individual. I take journeys with them into their universe to help them unpack what is not theirs so that they may come into coherence and alignment with what is. I look at us as nature, and nature is perfection. And without all of the programming from our society, our religious indoctrination, our education systems, we are beings of infinite potential in a universe of unlimited possibility. But we don't know that because they didn't tell us that at school. And our parents didn't tell us because they didn't know either. So majority of society is being born into, birthed unto, the momentum tunnel of consensual reality. And the momentum tunnel of consensual reality is spiraling down a track of destruction and disconnection with our planet, with ourselves and with each other. It's a real distortion of the word matrix, which the absolute root of matrix is about mother and the womb of creation. So we're being born into a distorted reality and programmed of this is how life should be and this is the reality we should live in. We think we're free, but we're not. We're another clone of conventional systems that are in disconnection. And our planet can't survive that way, and we don't thrive that way. We are bound through space and time. There's a wonderful quote that comes out of the movie Cloud Atlas. And literally, from the womb to the tomb, we will recreate and live from our past unless we change the narrative. To change the story means that we actually have to unpack the stories that are not ours. I look at the body as the physical manifestation of a library. So I help people become their own librarian, to unpack those stories that no longer serve, giving gratitudes for the gifts, the lessons learned, and releasing all that no longer serves. And we're not just carrying what we inherited from this life. We carry anything unresolved from past lives. We carry anything unresolved from our ancestors' lives, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, all since energetic healing was outlawed and the power was given over to religious systems that taught us God and was outside of ourselves. So there's a lot of unpacking to do. And as we unpack, we need to start aligning the bodies. The physical body, the mental body, emotional bodies with the soul. For they are our earth team. And for most people, the way we've been programmed, we have a mind leading the earth team. And the mind has been programmed through the education system, through what we perceive as reality external, which is what gets replicated and reproduced internally and then externally. So what happens is when we unpack what's not ours and start coming to coherence, the mind takes a break, takes a rest, and the soul steps in. And the soul knows who we are, why we've come here, what our earth walk is about. And we can come into coherence, into alignment through the bodies and integration with that soul. We have a navigation system beyond comprehension that can answer all our questions, make all our choices, and shift our trajectory from a future based on fate to a divine dance with destiny. And we get to start making art of life. And really, by coming into these bodies, get to enjoy the absolute physical pleasure of being here on Earth in this extraordinary animal body at this exciting time of evolution on our planet. That was a long answer.
It was a good answer. Because it perfectly summarizes what my experience of this work has been, which has been really finding myself in a space in my life where I woke up and realized, oh my God, this can't be it. It can't be like this. There's got to be more to life. There's got to be a better way to live. But finding myself completely, it reminds me of actually watching The Matrix, and when Neo wakes up and he's in this pod, and then you're looking around at all these other pods, and there's all this liquid, and you're like, oh my God, there's all these holes, what's going on? But I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. Like, what do I do next, you know? And I have found this to be, it's a very disorienting feeling of just having this wake-up call and realizing that something really needs to shift, but not really understanding what the road looks like, what the pathway, and all of these things that you're sharing, which I learned along the way, but of course did not know 3 years ago when I sat in a session with you. And what now, looking back now on the past 3 years and hearing you summarize it like that, it really makes sense to me that the past few years has been a process of waking up to this understanding that there's something more. And then not just sitting there being like, I want something more, but actually walking the steps of, okay, we've got some cleanup to do, which is very humbling, and really starting to see that there's all of this conditioning, as you mentioned, from my society, from my culture that I grew up in, my family, ancestral. There's all of these layers that were interfering with me accessing myself, my soul, my sensitivity, my inner knowing. It just felt like there was this, almost like when you're in a car and you have a windshield and it's just caked with mud, and you gotta like clean off the layers for you to be able to see. And one of my experiences of doing this work, and as you know, as you're sharing, to really look at what are the limiting belief systems that I've been engaging in? How do I process them through my emotional body? How do I get my bodies back online? How do I start to allow my soul to lead instead of it being my mind in the driver's seat? And as I've been going through this journey and shedding these layers of old conditioning and shedding all that is not who I truly am in my soul essence, what I have noticed is just these gifts coming online, you know, and this ability, my intuition is growing stronger. My ability to access that inner knowing is getting more refined. The ability to discern what is right for me, what is not right for me, is becoming more clear, more refined, more attuned. And the other thing I've noticed is that by letting go of this past conditioning and becoming more of who I am, and allowing that to open up every single day and strengthening that through the daily practices and through the source alignment that we do, has been this just unfolding of, oh my God, there's actually all these things I know, and all these things I can be, and life is getting exciting. It's getting really juicy again. And it's like, okay, what else? And what you shared with me a few years ago, which didn't land that much because I was too preoccupied with other things, is that it can get more graceful and more fun and more pleasurable. And there is a way out and in and through. And so I'd be really curious, you know, because I know you mentioned about the word matrix. It gets tossed around a lot. And I've used it as well. But I love this description that you're saying, that it's been distorted, and you gave it a new definition. I'd love to hear you share about what is the matrix as it's being tossed around, and also when you wake up, what is that from your experience, from your understanding? What is this waking up thing? Because a lot of people talk about a spiritual awakening and waking up. When you're in that pod and you're like, open your eyes and you're looking around, you're like, oh my God, what is this? What's actually happening?
Let's begin with a little shamanic lesson. In the writings of Carlos Castaneda, he refers to the assemblage point, which is a invisible sphere that is our recorder and sits in our field. While we are sharing this information, I have a sphere, you have a sphere. It is recording this whole experience beyond the recording that's happening through the microphones and cameras. If you ever wanted to record this experience, you don't have to go to your computer or online. You can simply shift your consciousness to record this experience. When we are born into these bodies, that assemblage point is very fluid. If you look at babies when they're interacting new in their environment, they're in awe, they're in wonder, they're innocent and they're curious and inquisitive about everything. And their recorder is very fluid and it's picking up information. They also are not so separated from the source and can quite possibly see through the veil into other realities, into other dimensions that are playing out simultaneously in their environment. If we are to leave the newborn child to find its own way to navigate through a natural and organic system, that child will never know fear and never know limitation, while still learning discernment. But our systems, the way society's programmed, is from a very early age. You know, when I was born into a hospital where the establishment decided it was important that babies were not kept with their mothers. Their mother needed to rest and the babies were kept elsewhere. In that process, the baby does not have the energetic protection of the mother's auric field while it's growing its own. So it's actually energetically a very unhealthy practice. And that bonding of mother and baby, although a physical umbilical cord may be released, there's still an energetic cord. And that connection and that communion is so important for the child to know that it's safe, to know that it's loved, and to have that connection. And we're taken from a very early age into disconnection, depending upon our birth process, the consciousness of our parents, the families and environments that we're born unto and into, and how soon we are exposed to mainstream media, be digital devices, Wi-Fi, e-smog. And all of that starts affecting us from a very young age and corrupting our natural and organic connection with creation and the cosmos. And then we go through an education system that is very outdated and subscribing to a history that is a very patriarchal, biased, of a very limited perception of the reality of humanity's past, which goes way beyond the birth of Christ. We are here birthing the sixth root race of humanity. And that began through the Sumerian timelines, Atlantean There's a lot of civilizations that remain unaccounted for in our history, yet remain recorded in our soul history and in the planet history of the planetary body. And it's actually, when we refer to, where the Bible refers to the flood, it's also referring to the fall of Atlantis, the fall of our disconnection of our multi-dimensionality, when we still had connection to our galactic origins while walking the earth in these amazing animal bodies. And then you must go to school, get a job, get married, have children, work hard, build a house, whatever comes next, probably mortgage, divorce, dysfunction, because if you haven't worked it out by then, it's going to crash. And next thing, people are retired, have no health, and wondering what they're here for. So there is no excuse now to wait that long to wake up. This is a wake-up call for humanity. It's time for us to ask those questions internally. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is this earth walk about?
This just came to me, and I'm just going with my intuition. I would be curious to hear you answer those 3 questions for me. That just pinged in. Yeah. Would you be willing to do that?
Who are we?
For the work that we've, like you knowing me and us working through this, doing this work, these 3 questions, I'd be curious, what would you say?
We are quite simply vibrational beings having a human experience. And we're here to remember how to love. To remember what love is. And that vibrational being is of extraterrestrial nature. If you look through most of the stories of creation of indigenous cultures, they will remind us we are from the stars. And why are we here? Yes, we're here to remember we're love. We're here to fully land into these bodies. Because if we fully land into this body, reconnect, recalibrate, come into coherence, and come into our heart, our power is unlimited. As an individual, and if when we stand together in a unified field of love, with our families, our soul families, our co-creators, we have the power to change the world. And we have a responsibility to change the world. We have a responsibility to this planet by inhabiting this physical human body, the microcosm of the macrocosm, our planetary host. We have a responsibility as guardians of Gaia. And most of us have such a distant relationship from the planet that they fear nature. Yet our elemental nature is a core source of our power. And so long as we are afraid of nature and disconnected from nature, we're afraid of our own power.
Yeah, I've been doing that Earth Priestess training with Anna Maria, who's a mutual friend of ours, and it's been a really profound journey of connecting to the elements and learning to communicate directly with the earth, and understanding that I never even thought about the way that we are afraid of nature. Afraid of getting dirty, afraid of the water. That's definitely me. Still working on that one. And afraid of getting burned. Just this fear of nature itself. And part of my training that I've been doing when it comes to becoming a better guardian of the earth has been really understanding how to get back into the elements. And I'm still very much on that path. But it's been powerful because, again, it's one of those things where the more connected I become to the planet, the more in my body I land, the more connected and in communion with my soul I am, the more I feel like I know where to do and where to go. And my intuition leads me places and spaces and people. And I find that my life starts to become more fluid as well. And my business starts to become more fluid. It just starts to reflect itself in every area of my life. What does it mean to be organic, sustainable, and natural when it comes to the way that we show up in the world? And, what I'm also really curious about is this feeling of when people are just waking up, like what to do. Somebody's listening and they're just in this space of, okay, I'm buying everything you're saying. Like, I get what you're saying. But where do I go next? What do I do? How do I actually not only start this awakening, but accelerate the journey? Because like you mentioned, we can't afford to do this later on. Like, it's just not, I don't want to be 80 years old and be like, oh, here we go. Oh, now I'm starting this journey. Like, I'm so grateful that I've started this journey in my early 30s. And so I'd be curious if you could share that. What happens when somebody is going through this awakening? Now what? What happens next?
So, in my own journey, I was in my late 30s when I literally had my cosmic kick out of Africa, my conservation work, in a 20-year relationship. And I knew, there was a deep knowing inside, I had to clean up my physical body and my energetic body. And I thought I would have to have enough finances to take care of myself for a 3-year period while I did that. However, I was very focused, very dedicated, and committed to the journey. And within 1.5 years, I had cleared enough that wasn't me, that I reconnected to the earth and the grid, aligned with my soul, and my life came online. And it has been guided ever since. And it's a process, and it's a journey, and it continues. So what's really important to understand is these bodies, these systems housed in this body, are cyclic in nature, like our planetary body. So our planet has seasonal cycles around the solar cycles and the lunar cycles. Our natural design is cyclic in nature. The momentum tunnel of consensual reality is direct, on one speed go, with no time to sound, breathe, move, or pause. So you've got civilization on a treadmill, having to do, having to go, non-stop, running from their past and grabbing for a future, and so far away from the present moment. So on the awakening journey, I invite everyone to pause, slow down, unplug, and do some housework. Literally, take time alone to sit with yourself and decide what matters in your life, what is important to you, and what really no longer serves. And an easy way to do this is through energy. You start wondering, where is my energy coming from? How am I managing it? And where am I directing it? You know, we're educated our energy comes from food, and I can assure you it comes from so many different natural resources beyond food. Our breath and our water is even more important than food. And our ability to self-source rather than feed off others horizontally also matters, because that brings us into our sovereignty. So pause and do your own housekeeping. Make space for the new. Shamanic rites of passage require death and rebirth, not through physically dying, but we literally have to die to the person we think we are to become the person we came here to be. So that takes a willingness to let go and a willingness to change. People who come to me, I say, you come to me because you want change, but are you ready to change the way you're walking in the world? And I ask that question because if people are not ready to change the way they're walking in the world, best they don't come to me, because it's going to get very bloody uncomfortable.
I know that much.
If you're still trying to hold on while your blueprint that's informing your reality is rapidly changing, you're going to get very, very uncomfortable. So we actually have to unpack, make space, let go of anything that is not serving us in that moment, and start a really healthy foundational practice. A multi-dimensional being in a physical body needs support to maintain a coherence and alignment. So that means getting up in the morning, making sure you're well hydrated, cleansing yourself, breath work, meditation, a integrative practice that helps us cultivate a strong and soft body, a bamboo body, so that energy may flow through our system without getting stuck. If we're contracted, energy can't move. If we're relaxed and expanded, energy flows with the energy of creation. And we start to get to experience the pleasure of being in a body regardless of where we are or who we are with. The barometer is the body of the soul. Are we listening to the body, the messages the body is giving us from the soul? In a culture that is here programmed to avoid pain and discomfort and take drugs and medication, it's like the messages, important messages, our soul is trying to get to our personality through the body. So rather than numb out, disconnect even further, pause, say, hey, what are you trying to tell me? What am I not getting? Because when it's time, and the soul will send messages very subtly at first, gradually, like invitations, like calling cards. But if we're not listening and looking and hearing, they get louder. Hello, hello, hello. And I don't know anyone on the planet right now who's not being called to shake up and wake up from this illusion that we've been fed and subscribed unknowingly. It's time to unplug. And that morning practice, that daily practice to nourish ourselves accordingly, take a look at diet, exercise, nutrition. These bodies, they weren't designed to wake up in the morning, run all day and collapse exhausted in bed at night, Optimal functioning happens from the parasympathetic nervous system. What does it mean to walk through life, to dance through life at the speed of love, not the speed of the clock? Mm-hmm. Where less is more. Instead of running for the next high, the next buzz, the next peak experience, or distracting ourselves with wonderful dopamine addictions, be them digital or substances. These systems have their own incredible pharmaceutical factory that's built in, our own biodelic pharmacy, that we can remember how to operate simply through breath and consciousness. They're magical, but nobody told us that. And although nobody told us this and we weren't taught this, we have no excuse now not to be able to do our own research and educate ourselves. There is an absolute multi-dimensional smorgasbord of paths, practitioners and facilitators, tools and techniques through which we can unpack that which is not ours. And that journey of discerning is part of our learning. We are here to master discernment in this dimension, others, and that begins at the very early stages of awakening. Don't follow the crowd. Follow your intuition. Our soul is the greatest guide we will always ever have. So our ability to listen more deeply to the soul is vital. And to feel our way through. And never become attached to any one path or any one person. We are all so unique, and we're here to unpack ourselves. To bring love, presence, and conscious care into our own system and find our own way through. Out of the momental tunnel of sensual reality, out of the matrix, and into the new earth and its infinite potential. That exists here and now for those who are able to maintain a frequency that supports.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I love hearing you speak about this, because it's almost like I'm getting a summary report of the past 3 years of studying this. I'm like, oh, this is a very condensed way to put together everything that I feel this is the journey that I've been undergoing in the past few years, and this unpacking that's been happening. And what I can speak to from my experience is that as I was letting go and doing the cleaning and doing the unpacking, what felt scary to me is, oh my God, what happens when I'm like, what's next? What's there? And that's the mind trying to still control the situation. And we know I have a very strong mind. We know this.
That could be an understatement, but anyway.
Very strong, but brilliant, but strong mind. And one of the things that has been the most challenging part of my path is to yield and allow. And just what you're saying about those signs, those subtle signs that sometimes in the past 3 years have gotten super strong. And I've had incidents, accidents, things like that that came up. I'm like, okay, I hear you, I'm listening. Okay, Zol, I got it. Oops, sorry about that. And I've had all these moments where I didn't trust, and then things got sticky and uncomfortable. And these moments where my mind was trying to control, and things got very, very uncomfortable. And I think, what I've learned through repetition is that it's worth listening to that intuition. It's worth listening to soul, because even when I don't get it, it somehow leads me to exactly where I need to be, beyond what I could have imagined or mentally fathomed. And I found this so many times where I listen to my soul, and then I'm either meeting a person, an opportunity presents itself, the next step reveals itself, something happens that's really beautiful and magical. And I'm quite stubborn in my ways, and so I feel like it's taken me a long time for me to really build that trust. But the thing is that the flip side of that stubbornness is that when I get something, I get it. And I'm extremely committed to walking this path. And I've been, and I know you've made little jokes about it here and there, where it's like I'm just relentless when it comes to walking this path and experiencing what you're speaking. Because what you're speaking to, I've had many experiences where I felt it was true. And then there's things that you speak to sometimes where I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, lady, but I'm just going to trust you. So I'm just going to keep walking this path because I know I'm going to get there someday. So it's been really beautiful for me to to really start getting into the space of I can trust more, okay, and I can trust more, and I can trust more. And not only that, it's been really healing for me because I feel as if I've been able to learn how to trust life. And that's a relationship that depends on, there's no person I need to learn how to trust that maybe will break my trust or something like it's just me and life. And there's this very strong bond that is developing with Gaia, life, nature, whatever name we want to put on it. But this really strong bond that's being created of I can trust life. Yeah. And life loves me. And I love life. Like there's this love that is unconditional, that is just beyond what I could ever fathom with my mental body. And it's this feeling of love is all around me. And I can trust love. I can trust life. And in all the moments where I'm stumbling and my little human brain gets in the way and it's like, oh, but what about this and what about that? And like, oh, this, oh, I'm distracted. Ooh, dopamine. You know, and there's all these moments where I'm just rolling around. I'm like, oops, my anchor. And I've been able to really strengthen them through my daily practice is this feeling, this pillar, you know, this pillar that's running through me all the way into the earth, into the sun, and just feeling my center. And again, coming back to I can trust life. Yeah. So if I can trust life, then the questions are different. It's not, why is this happening to me? It's not, why is this person saying this thing, or why me? You know, it shifts out of this victim consciousness and it goes into, well, if I can trust life and I can trust that I am at one with everything, that I am creating everything. So why am I creating this consciously or unconsciously? Why am I creating this experience in my life? And what is it that I'd like to experience instead? And what are the belief systems that are interfering and basically creating a reality that I'm not super pleased with? And it starts to become like this fun puzzle instead of being this, oh my God, I'm in the middle of this situation that I can't control and I don't know what to do and I don't know how to do it. It starts to become this puzzle where I'm walking about living my daily life and like, oh, interesting, this is happening. Okay, what is this reflecting about me? What's inside of me that I'm projecting into external reality right now? This person, what do they represent to me? This situation, what is it mirroring back to me? And it becomes this very fun game of just getting curious about, why am I creating this? What's going on in my unconscious? And now that doing this work for so many years with you, I'm able to track what is going on. And I can like track it like a dog, like a dog hunts down, you know, the truffles. He's like, where is it? Where's the limiting belief system, right? And then you get to the limiting belief system. It's like, all right, what's the emotional hook in there? And then you go into the emotion and sound breath movement. You process the emotion. And then it's like, okay, what do I choose instead? So it's become this just empowering journey of everything is happening for me and everything is happening like with me. And so if I can trust life and I can trust this to be true, then what do I choose to do next? Who do I choose to be next? And it's just lifted like this huge weight off of the way I used to live my life being at effect. And it's just now it's different. It's really, really different. And so, you know, I'd be really curious if there's anything that comes up that you want to respond to on that. And as well, if you could share with us, because we've talked a lot about New Earth. And I know that in the spiritual world, in the Instagram world, this word is getting tossed around like super just frivolously. And I love to hear your take on what the heck is this New Earth stuff, this New Earth talk that people are, this New Age New Earth talk. How can we land this? What is New Earth talk? What does it mean to be a New Earth frequency? And how do we call this New Earth into the now?
Okay. Let's backtrack a little bit because there's so many other good pieces in your sharing. And the first one that came up is a really simple way you can understand reality to help reclaim your power. And that is to understand the triangle of disempowerment. 3 corners is a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim. And whether we are the persecutor, rescuer, or the victim, we are not in our power. And this may play out internally. Would we talk to others the way we speak to ourselves at times? It can play out in relationships, be them family relationships, business relationships, intimate relationships, particularly in codependent relationships where there is a closed energy center. It's all your fault. I'm sorry, poor me. So long as you're dancing around the triangle of disempowerment, you're not in your power. And it's been used to conquer continents, where the conquistadors came into South America, overpowered the indigenous Indians, told them they were inferior and barbaric, and then brought in the Catholic Church as the rescuer. So it can be used in a microcosm or the macrocosm, so long as we are, poor me, you did this to me, or it's all your fault, or let me save you, we're not in our power. So that ability to understand when we are the producer, director, and main actor on this planetary pantomime and sensual stage, we're creating our reality, consciously or unconsciously, and if we don't like it, we can change it. We have the power to change it. And yes, learning the tools and techniques to be able to track ourselves and resolve things ourselves is part of the journey home. And another mention into beliefs, when somebody said to me once, any belief is limiting, I was silent. I paused because there was so much truth in that only 12 years later I'm getting to the depth of. To completely dissolve into the cauldron of creation, I'm having to dissolve every tiny belief that's left and let go of it. So that this body is no longer a fixed library but resumes its capacity to be a process to interact with environment, and she literally shapeshifts now on whatever continent I'm walking. It's fascinating. And the other piece that felt to be shared was, we mentioned earlier about this is the microcosm of the macrocosm, and we are cyclic beings. To understand that the awakening process happens in cycles. And often when we have our first awakening, there's an expansion, there's an influx of light into our system, and it can be so powerful, so life-changing, so overpowering and orgasmic or ecstatic, that we're like a lighthouse and we come online. And we have, it's the most important time that we take charge and occupy our lighthouse. Because when we fill with light and come online like a lighthouse, we become a beacon for other beings and dimensional entities as well. So best occupy ourselves so we don't get occupied. Understand, learn what goes on in the unseen worlds so that we don't get interfered with from other levels and dimensions. And really occupy and command this space, this sacred temple space in our dimensional system. And after that, what will happen is often we go into light, then what it does is it pushes up all the mud, all the crap, for the next layer of excavation. And it's really important to address the mud at the rate it rises. so that you don't get bogged down and overwhelmed by it. Because the dark night of the soul can take a long time to recover from, some if at all. Know that it's part of the process, know not to be afraid of it, and know that there is enough people awake on the planet and conscious communities emerging that you can go to those places and find support for people who have walked that path before. That may not be through a particular path or school or mystery school, but they have the foundational pieces where you can find a safe haven while your reality disintegrates, dismantles, so that something new and true can emerge from that. And that cycle may repeat itself, but usually never as deep or as dark as the first cycle. So that having faith and trust in the process is vital. You know, your mind is brilliant. Your mind is amazing. I actually love your mind. And we're required to master the mind and manage the emotional body without bypassing or disconnecting from the emotional body. Because emotions are elemental. That's where our life force and power can be transformed into creation. So that mastery in mind and management emotions are practice. With time and practice, they become a new way of being. It's obtainable, it's manageable, and it's pleasurable not to have our mind and emotions running our show anymore. Then we get to let our body and soul lead the way and to feel our way through life. It's like if you haven't understood what I'm saying at times, it hasn't made sense to your conscious mind, yet at a soul level, there's something in it that feels true to you. You're not following me aimlessly. You're one of the best ones who say, wait, I need you to speak into that a bit more, because I know there's something important here, and you're feeling your way through. So you are practicing and fine-tuning your own instrument of discernment that will operate completely independent of me out there in the world. And the more you can hone that, the more faith and trust you have in it. Where you don't have to control your external reality any longer or be controlled by it. And you start to engage in this dance called life. And it's a lot of fun. It's like, I look at these as multi-dimensional jigsaw puzzles that we go through life putting back together. And the more we get back together, the more parts of our soul consciousness we collect through time, space, and dimension, bring them into the present moment, bring them into now, the more we get to play and have fun. And it is an absolute joy to be here now in this body at this extraordinary time of evolution on our planet, as we are birthing our new earth. And a brief background on where to go to understand this piece in connection with the Mayan calendar. Our Gregorian calendar does not honor our cyclic nature. It does not honor the seasonal cycles, the solar cycles, the lunar cycles in the perfection of nature. It's slightly off. So we're here to recalibrate into the planetary cycles, into our monthly cycles, into our solar quarterly cycles, into the planetary cycles in our solar system. And then we actually have a gift of the Mayan calendar, which is a galactic calendar, talking about, referring to, supporting the cycles of evolution in human consciousness. And you can look at the work of Carl Johan Kalman, a Swedish brother who lives in New Mexico, who is a scientist who has done a lot of research in the Mayan calendar. But at the end of October 2011, it was the birth of the ninth wave. Most of humanity, that momentum tunnel of consensual reality, is streaming through along on probably the sixth and seventh waves of consciousness right now. That exists simultaneously with that which was before and that which precedes. And as we start awakening, we start lifting our head up from that momentum tunnel. And a lot of people are referring to this as 5D consciousness, which is quite a limited description of our ultimate potential, which is available now. But that'd be like coming up through the eighth wave of the Mayan galactic calendar or into the ninth wave of consciousness. So since October 2011, that has been available to us. We're looking at 12 years now it's been available to us. So people who have been doing their housework and homework for that long are now becoming more stable in higher frequencies and are able to live the new earth frequencies now. And the new earth exists now at a frequency. And when we can stabilize that in that frequency, then we can live it here now. And we are choosing consciously every moment of every day what we're feeding our consciousness to. And I remember New Year's Eve 3 years ago, I was in my beautiful house, home and horse sit in far north of Te Tai Kōkara, New Zealand, where I grew up. And the guidance was, you are here to live New Earth now. Do not subscribe, do not feed your consciousness to anything else that is about to unfold on our planet. You have a responsibility and required to anchor your consciousness in the new earth, in the ninth wave of the Mayan calendar now. And this is the power we have. Every thought, every word, every action contains energy. So what are we feeding our consciousness to? What if we just paused and stopped talking and did a reset? And with that, knowing that everything I think about, talk about, or action I take is making a difference, a ripple into this pool of cosmic creation, is informing what is unfolding on our planet. What are we choosing to feed our consciousness to? That's why it's called Welcome to Earth School, the planet of duality where we choose to come for the greatest opportunity of our soul's evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The consciousness piece is really one that I have been sitting with very deeply and will continue to, because this piece around us creating our reality, and you know what, as you said, like the thoughts, our actions. What was the third one?
Our thoughts, our words, our actions.
Words and action. Oh, words. Funny, I would forget the word. But our thoughts, words, and actions to be in coherence with what we're here to bring forward into the now has been something that I've really been sitting a lot with, because it influences the decisions I make in my life. It influences the decisions I make in my business. It influences how I show up in my service. And this is very much the pathway for, when we even think about, sometimes, one of my talents is bridging, is being a bridge between this unseen realm and how do we make it seen and more tangible and more physical. And all these really big concepts that we're talking about, which probably for most people listening is either they've had a felt experience of it or is resonating as true, which is one of the reasons they would be attracted to be here for this long to begin with. And having this understanding that with our thoughts, our words, and our actions, we are creating our reality, it gives a very tangible tool for us to create what we desire to create. It's very much like it's an easy check-in. It's an easy way to take all these big concepts and all these pieces around being here for our soul destiny, and now we're in our mind, now we're in emotional bodies, now something has hijacked our attention, da, 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 and all the clutter and all the noise. But when you pause, you just pause and you breathe and you come back into your pillar. You reconnect back into the earth, back into your heart, back into the sun. And you just pause. And you can ask that question, which is, my words that I've spoken, how are they informing my reality right now? What actions have I taken today? What actions do I intend to take today? What are the thoughts that are currently running my mind? And am I going to go and do something about that? Am I going to allow this narrative to just keep playing out today, tomorrow, in this situation with this person? Or am I going to pause, recognize that there's a belief system here that is interfering with the reality that I desire to bring into the now, and then go in it, process it, let it go, clean it up, and then take the next thought, take the next action, and really start to, in the next word that's going to call that into reality. So that to me feels like a really grounding 3 little tools to use in our everyday to check in with ourselves and to really see whether those thoughts, actions, and words are resonating with who we're here to become and what we're being called into, and having a little soul check-in every single day for us to remember where we're going and where we want to go.
Yeah, and it's also, having our words in alignment with our actions. Do we do what we say? Are we walking our talk?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we thinking about, this is the truth, but this is what the world wants to see, so let me show that side of it instead, That is not in coherence, it's not in alignment. So it doesn't have the power of truth and love, A lot of the dysfunction is placed upon emerges from dysfunctional relating, which we're imprinted from a very early age, In an ideal world, the one gift we need to receive from the mother is unconditional love. And most of us don't know that. They've had love was conditional. I must say I was very fortunate to have very fierce, unconditional love from my mother. And it's been a gift, because I never know how many didn't experience that. And if we haven't had unconditional love, if we don't know what that is, we'll be looking outside of ourselves for love our entire life until we resolve it within our own feminine template. And from our Father, we need to be seen and acknowledged. I love you for who you are. I see you. And if we haven't received that, we'll often spend our lives doing gymnastics and bending backwards and over and compromising ourselves to get that externally. So when we can bring that feminine and masculine template from our mother and father programming back into relationship and into union with the inner child, we will experience a whole new reality. And if we don't, the dramas will be recreated and will play out in the relationships in our lives. And if we engage in our relationships consciously, they can be a pathway to enlightenment. So primary importance is, what's the foundation of our relationships? Are they founded in love, honor, respect, truth, transparency, and integrity, authenticity, and kindness, empathy, and compassion? Because if they are, there's a lot of room and safe space for play and co-creation and passion and pleasure.
And that is the journey, going into that. And it's really beautiful, even as we've gone through what I feel like is the cycle of starting, and then where do we want to end up, and how is just, I feel in the present moment just very humbled, because which we know is not always my favorite trait. But really, because I'm realizing that there's a few, what's come up for me as we've been speaking is just, I feel so young and yet so wise at the same time. There's so many things that I've learned by doing this work that I'm continuing to learn, that I'm like, oh yeah, doing good there. And then there's so many things where I'm like, oh my God, I'm only getting started here, but what it ultimately comes down to, at least for me, is that my commitment is to see this through, and my commitment is to walk the path of my soul's highest possible destiny. Like, this is the path I wish to walk in this earth walk, and it's been really beautiful to really see all the places and spaces where I get it, where I don't get it, where I'm embodied, where I'm not embodied. And I think something that I also want to speak to for those who might be listening, and no matter, there's some people who are really, really far in their journey, farther than I am, maybe farther, who knows, maybe farther than you are, who knows. And then there's people listening that are in a different stage right now, just beginning perhaps, and just all different walks of life and different stages and places and spaces. And I think it's worth saying, that kindness, I think I've needed to learn this lesson again and again and again, which is, my eternal impatience is in my eternal impatience, I've needed to learn that it takes alignment. I was going to say time, but it takes alignment, which we can experience through time in 3D reality. And just that kindness of, like, some things are going to click, some things are not going to click. And we just keep showing up in love. We just keep showing up in that alignment and that commitment. And life gets more beautiful. It gets more joyous. It gets more pleasurable. It gets more fun. So it's really beautiful, because even in today's episode, I feel like I've learned a lot. It's almost like we just summarized basically the work we've been doing for the past 3 years. And it's really beautiful to still see the places and spaces where I get to show up and do and be better in. And also the places and spaces where I'm like, I had no idea what you were talking about, like even a year ago. Like, what is this lady saying? And I'm like, I know what you're saying. I got it. I know what you're saying. I know it. So yeah, like, thank you so much for this work that you're doing, and for the ways that you have held the fort down for me as I've stormed through the winds of life in the past few years. And I really deeply appreciate your patience and your love in being able to just support me through what I thought was not possible for me, and even recognizing, I remember at my birthday in October, I actually forgot what you said to me, but it was beautiful. I remember how I felt, and that's what matters, which you said to me that I changed a lot, and I'm not the same. I'm not the same person that I was a few years ago. And I remember being taken aback by that in the moment. But now, as the months have passed, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I have completely shifted, and more so readjusted back to me, and very imperfectly, and very sometimes messy, and but coming back to me again and again and again and again and again. Yeah, there's no better journey.
You know, I think what's really important, that this journey home to self is unique. Every soul is unique. Their earth walk is unique. Where they've come from is unique. Never compare yourself to anyone else. If you ever want to compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to the person you were. And give yourself a hug for the person you've become. You know, it's been an extraordinary journey with you in these past almost 3 years. You are not the same person I met then. She was a part of you, but she wasn't authentically who you are. And to witness Celine that's emerging now gives me great joy. And to be able to share this journey with you has been such a great gift, because you're probably one of the most committed and invested and dedicated to your personal path that I've ever met, beyond my own commitment. Yeah. And I celebrate you. And celebrate you stepping into responsibility as a creator and sharing what you've learned with your community. Yeah. Because one thing is to get it, but then to embody it and be able to translate that into your uniqueness and communicate it to others deepens the knowing in the self, the knowing of self. And to know thyself is the pathway home. So thank you.
Beautiful. I'm like, yeah. I got all giddy on that one. Thank you so much. And as we start to close today's journey, I wanted to ask some fun questions. we've been diving deep in, which is, you know, it's a rare opportunity that to have you on and to have somebody who knows me so closely and so intimately, and we've spent so much time together. So I would love to ask you, what is your favorite memory of us?
I have so many, but the ones that come to mind is the look on your face when we were on a sacred journey in Egypt. And I said to you, okay, Celine, knowing your love of water, we're in the Nile for the next 9 nights. And your initiation into the Nile is going to be submerging your body in the Nile for 9 days. And the resistance, the contraction was palpable through my body. But by the end of those 9 days and 9 nights on the Nile, you had a relationship with one of the mightiest river systems on our planet. And I still have the video of you playing in there with Jeff and Jazzy like a child of Earth.
Oh my God.
And that is one of the best and most priceless memories. Yeah.
I love it. And my other fun question, I would say, is actually, this one is for the listeners as well, for who's tuning in. Oh wow, how random it's coming through. What would be the next topic to cover? How random.
Our ecosexual nature.
Ooh, that's good.
Because our ecosexual nature revolutionizes both our relationship with others and our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with nature in a very powerful and pleasurable way. You know, when we're talking about sexual energy and life force energy, in the English language there's separate names, but in indigenous languages they're not. They're one and the same. Our sexual energy is our life force energy. And when we really understand this powerful primordial energy of creation, and when we allow it to flow through us, neither distorted or controlled, we restore our ecosexual nature and are able to make love to life.
That was a good question. I'm glad I asked it because that was the answer. Okay. And then I got a third one. I was given 3 questions and I had no idea what they were. So the third one that just came through is when in our relationship, when have you laughed the most? What was the funniest moment that you've had?
You know, there's been quite a lot of laughs along the way. But you know what? One of the funniest ones, again, actually, while we were journeying in Egypt, and we're on this beautiful big dahabeah, the royal way to journey through Upper Egypt and the temples there. And it was just one morning, and this is with Jeff and Jazzy again. And in this moment, Jeff said, "Celine, please grab me a tea." The look of horror. And then composure, I can do this. As you went to the tea table to make Jeff's tea, I was like, wow, we're going to have to bring in some cooking lessons and basic tea making skills, tea lady style. But that was definitely my morning of belly laughter.
But you saw it. I was like, I'm capable. I got it. I'm like, oh my God, where's the tea bag with the water? What do I do? All right. We know cooking is not one of my fortes yet, but I'm walking that pathway. Like, what do I do with this tea bag? I remember, I've forgotten about that. Yeah, but I remember I'm proud of myself. I was trying to hold down the fort, but you saw it.
That was a good laugh, yeah.
So good. All right. So as we begin to wrap up this episode, what I'd love to, I'm sure people are like, who is this tea lady, cleaning lady person? So if you could share with us, where can people find you if they were to look for you, seek you out? And also if there's any final message that you'd like to share, and if not, that's fine as well.
Yeah, first of all, the message, I'm finding it fascinating because we are recording this in a studio in Bali on the eve of a full moon lunar eclipse. And eclipses are really powerful portals of reset. You know, it's when the pathway of the sun and the moon, of who we are and who we think we are, intersect with the planetary body. And it calls us to align with soul. So it's going to be really interesting that when this program is viewed in a few months from now, around about Lionsgate, when we're in a gathering in Teotihuacan pyramids in Mexico, for people to reflect what happened at this time in their lives and how they responded to what was happening in their lives. Because by reflection on this time, that will best prepare those who are watching for the eclipses that will follow in October. So it's a lovely little experiential reflection and journey to give everyone who's joined us for this journey. And you are welcome to find me on Earthwalk Global. That's earthwalk.global, or earthwalkglobal@gmail.com. And Earthwalk School of Evolution, which is emerging this year, with lots of offerings and programs to support you on your unique path of soul embodiment and evolution, for those who are ready for the challenge and for change. I look forward to meeting you.
Beautiful. And for those of you who would love to learn what the source alignment meditation that we have been discussing in today's episode is, what we've gone ahead and done is we've actually recorded the source alignment meditation for you that you can play, you can learn from, and you can also use for your own morning practice. So you can go ahead and do that. It is in the show notes. You can download it completely for free and check out like how it is that we do our source alignment meditation every single morning for us to come back into our sovereignty, come back to ourselves, and set us up for success. So close. And set us up for success throughout the day. So that's available to you. And yeah, I would say thank you so much, Leanne, for joining us. I love seeing you. I love that I get to see you all the time. I feel very privileged in that way. And thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge and everything that you have shared today. And for those of you who loved certain parts of what Leanne has shared or I have shared, feel free to take a screenshot and tag on social media and let us know what you think.
Thank you.
Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta or visiting my website at celinedacosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.